Okay, so the only thing that we would like to combine into a single mesh is this symmetry object. So that's the subdivision surface is going to do its work on whatever we combine right here. So if we make this editable, this will combine it into a symmetry object. And actually, I want to keep this one, so let's make it current state to object instead. And then now we've got this woman body under a woman symmetry object null that then can go into its own subdivision surface. So let's just keep this one inside of that original geometry. And then this one we'll put into its own subdivision surface. There we go. And we'll call this woman body. And this is all combined now. So now we can go in and do a little bit of smoothing on this center point right here. So it doesn't have that big crease right in the middle. So this should look a lot better when we turn on this subdivision surface. There we go. And then we just want to make sure that these pants are also editable. So we'll change this into a current state to object. Here's our legs. And then we'll just delete this null that it created, and we'll put this legs inside of the original geometry null that's turned off. So now the three pieces of geometry that we're working with, and the legs also need to be in their own subdivision surface, are this infinity scarf, the woman's body, and the legs. And at this point, we need to determine whether we want to have the skeleton that we're going to create be bound to two different pieces of geometry, or if we want to combine this into the same piece of geometry. You can do it either way, whatever you're most comfortable with. For now, what I want to do is keep them separated. And that's just for me. I'd like to try to texture them a little bit differently and perhaps just keep them separated just for the purposes of simplification for now. And let's put these all into a single null with the head elements as well. We'll call this woman character. Actually, we should call this woman character geometry. And now let's save this one out. I'll increment it up. Okay, so now we're on to the rigging part of this whole process, and it can be challenging, it can be scary if you've never done it. Maybe it's something you've tried before, but it just didn't work out like you thought it would. You think, how hard could it be to add a little skeleton to a finger? And then all of a sudden when you try to bend this finger, all this geometry follows with it, and you just decided, this is too much, I can't handle this. You weren't able to find the right tutorials to help you through it. This is going to help you through it, and I just want you to know that this is actually, for me, one of my favorite parts of this process. I like to just stretch out and just get ready for what I call the Zen of rigging. The main idea of rigging is that you are making things follow other things. So in our case, we have all of these vertices and all these lines and shapes and things that we're going to be creating bones inside of the mesh, that all of these vertices we're going to tell them to follow one or more of those bones. And we're going to go to this view. And in fact, I think at this point it's okay to turn off the background images. Okay. And now I think this display mode of having this wireframe is actually good, so I'm going to keep it like that for now. Maybe once we start doing weight painting, we'll turn that back to a shaded view so that we can start to see some of those weights. Okay, but for now, let's go to this view. Everything's nice and centered up. And I'm going to add a few tools to this shelf right here. And the way I like to do that is by going to Shift-C. I'm going to type in Joint Tool. I'm going to add that to the shelf right here. I'm going to do a Joint Align tool. Let's do Mirror tool. going to add the IK. Actually, yeah, IK, create IK chain. This is what we want right over here. I'm going to add something called the bind tool. Where is it? And 2 more. Weight tool, I'm going to add it over here, and the weight manager. So I think that's all we need for now. There's one more actually. Let's do reset PSR. Because it's going to show up right back there. Okay, cool. These are some of my favorite tools to have open while I'm rigging things. But let's just talk about the joint tool. With the joint tool, you can move, split, and draw joints. So what you do, if you try to get in here and you start to click around, nothing happens. And that's because for some reason with Cinema 4D, with the joint tool, you need to actually click Control while you are drawing the joints. So let's do this. I'm going to turn on snapping again. And instead of vertex snap, I'm going to do an edge snap. We'll turn off vertex snap. And also let's see what happens if I turn on axis snap as well. Okay, maybe I do want that grid back, so let's go to turn on the grid. Okay. So with the joint tool selected, you have some options down here where the joint is going to bone to the child, or you can have the size to a length and all of this other stuff. And it's asking if I want to have a root null. So I think I do for this very first one because the root is going to be where that waist is, and we can use that root to move the character in the future. So for now, let's just go ahead and find where we want this root to be. And I'm just going to make it right at the waist, which is right about here. I'm holding Control, and it looks like it's at a position of 0 and 500 centimeters up. That's great. We're going to keep going. How many bones should we have kind of in this spinal cord? It's really up to you. The more bendy you want it to be, the more bones you want it to have. In my case, I usually have about 1, 2, 3, and then I go up to the neck bone here. So I'm going to make 3 more bones, holding Control while I have this joint selected. This is just going to keep parenting down this chain while I hold Control. It's trying to snap to this body right here, and that's okay. We'll align these in just a minute, but for now, let's just go up a little bit right here. We'll go up a little bit more, and then we'll go up to the chest area right here. And then let's go up to the neck. Okay, I kind of want to turn off this scarf for now. Okay, let's go up to the neck, right about here. And then right where the head is going to move, put one right here. And right at the tip of the head, turn off the hair as well. Right at the tip. This is where we want one more bone. Okay, so now let's go through and we'll name these. Waist, spine 01, spine 02, spine 03. Actually, that's not spine 03. I think this is chest. Neck base. Head, and head tip. All right, at this point, it's a good idea to just check where all of these axes are. So right now, I've got it on object mode, which looks like it's different than the world axis. And I'm not sure if I like that. In fact, if I do a z-axis turn, I kind of want it to be the way that the world axis is turning, not the way it has my z-axis right now. So you see how this waist joint is pointing so that it's almost like it thinks it's facing up like this. And so if it turns to the left and right, it's actually turning like in a weird z-axis motion. And I actually kind of want that to be a little different. So let's do what's called a joint align tool. Right here. On the joint align tool, you can align the axis from the joint in the direction of the bone, where the up axis is Y, Let's just see what happens if I do that. Align with previous and the children. That's great. Let's try it. So if I click align, it looks like didn't quite do what I thought it was going to. So let's just make sure on that joint align tool we try a few other things. The up axis, I'm going to call that the Z this time. So there we go. So now when I do a Y rotation, yeah, so that's all I needed to do was change that up axis on that joint align tool to Z, because I want these to be facing in the Z direction. So I think that's how they all are now, but let's just check. We'll go up the line, make sure that when we hit rotate, that the Z turns it like this. Yep, they're all nice and aligned now. So that's really just an orientation type tool. So at this point, what I can do is from the side view, use that joint tool to kind of move these around a little bit. This is why it doesn't let you do anything when you just click it instead of command clicking, because what you can do is just grab one of these, and instead of moving everything, it's just going to move a couple of them, or it's just going to move the one that you click on. So how does the spine curl? It's kind of like, actually more like goes like this. This doesn't matter too much that it's forward or backward in this chain, as long as this right here hits right where we want the head to move, and at the top it goes up to here. That's all well and good. So that's all looking really nice. And now we're ready to move on to some shoulders and clavicles and all that good stuff. So how do we do that? We need to go to now this chest right here. I'm going to add some bones at the clavicle using the joint tool. We'll do the same thing. I'm not going to do a root null this time. I just want it to go straight off of this chest bone. So click where you want to start this next chain, and I'm going to make a clavicle bone right about here. This is where we want to be able to move some stuff up and down. The shoulder bone will be right here. And then we're going to have this huge long upper arm. Goes to about right here. And then we'll make the wrist right here. And then we'll work on the hands in just a little bit. So let's make sure we name all these appropriately. We'll call this clavicle, shoulder, oops, elbow, wrist. Now let's go to the naming tool. So one more tool we're going to add to our shelf is called the naming tool. So if you hit Shift C, you can type in naming tool right here and just drag it up to your shelf like this. With the naming tool, you can apply prefixes and suffixes to your objects. And so what I want to do is add a prefix with left and the suffix of 01, and then I'll hit apply. Right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to add this L underscore on the prefix, but you have to do it under replace, and then with suffix 01 on all of these. I had L underscore clavicle already, so we're just going to delete that. It's an easy way to add a left and right suffix to, or prefix and suffix to your joint names. So there we have that. And now what we are going to do is go ahead and add these bones for our fingers. We've got to do that from the other side. This gets a little bit complicated, but that's okay. I'm going to start at the wrist with the joint tool, making sure root null is not on. Align axis is fine because we are going to go back in and make sure these are all facing the direction that we want them to face. You know, certain ways that we want our fingers to be able to bend. We don't want the axes to be facing all of these weird directions. We want them to be facing so that the Z will rotate it this way and Y will rotate it that way. So, all right, let's hold control, and we're just going to go one bone at a time. This is about where we want the thumb to be able to bend first, second, and the tip. And make sure snapping is on. You can see that it didn't quite make it through. So from the top view, we can kind of start dragging this around. using the joint tool again, because if you didn't have the joint tool on and you started to try to move these around, you'll see that it actually moves the whole chain. You don't really want to do that. You just kind of want to move the joint into the place that you want it. There we go. It's looking pretty good. From this angle, it looks good too. Maybe not quite so much on this angle, so let's move that back in. All right. Looking good. So let's go back to this joint right here. We'll name these first. We'll call this thumb 01, left thumb 02, and left thumb tip. Let's go back to the wrist. I'm going to start moving down the chain here. Control click at where you want this first knuckle. Second, there should be 3 here. You can see it's not quite making it to where the finger is. So what I like to do in this case is turn on that quick shading. You can actually see where that finger actually is. And let's move this joint up a little bit from the side. I want this to have lines though, so I can kind of see where those joints are supposed to be. Like there's one right there. Looks like there's one right here. And the last one is at the tip. So there we go. And see from this angle you can actually see it's nicely aligned with the finger. You can even open up your perspective view and just kind of like twirl around it just to make sure everything looks like it's kind of lined up. It is. So now we can get back to our wrist after we name these. So we'll just call this pointer 01, pointer 02, pointer 03, and pointer tip. Grab all those again, do the naming tool, and we'll get rid of the suffix and we'll add the prefix to all of those. Left pointer. If you click on that left wrist again, we'll control click. Oh, got to be on this joint tool, but then we'll control click where we want this next joint chain to start. Keep control clicking to get down the line there. And then we'll have to start moving these once again. This is where it gets a little cumbersome because you're trying to line it up with something that you can barely see in 3D space. But as long as you've got your different views set up, you should be able to pretty easily snap these into place. And we'll just make sure. I don't like how this is kind of bending up, so let's get it nice on the end of the tip here. This might need moved up just a little bit, so we're sort of bending downward. And then this joint here, kind of want to move it up a little bit. So again, so that we're coming out of the wrist, but we're sort of going back down. So it's going out and then down. All right, so let's call these middle 01, middle tip. Grab all these, do the naming tool, add that left underscore. We're going to go back to that wrist. Control click, control click, control click, control click. I'm only doing one finger at a time just so that I can really see what I'm doing. So at this point what you can do is see how this says front? You can change the camera from the so you can change the camera from front to back like this. You can actually see the other fingers on the other side. So this is the pinky finger now and the ring finger. So not that it helps us that much with the ring finger, but it does at least get us closer to being able to see it. There we go. It's right here, 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 and here. I'm just going to twirl around this just to see. We'll turn on our lines so we can actually see whether these are lining up to their respective bending places. And it looks like this one could maybe move up just a little bit. Right there. That's where we want that one to bend. We've got some bending spots that could also be, we should move these down a little bit. So let's move this one down into where it bends. Okay, that's looking better. Here, here. And we got one more finger to go, but let's name this one. O1, O2, left ring, O3, and then the left ring tip. Didn't use the naming tool that time, I just typed it. All right, we're going to control click down the line here. And this is one where the pinky is going to definitely help. Seeing it from this side. You can see that's where that first joint should be. Second. Third. And fourth. From this angle it looks okay. I'm just going to try to move these a little bit more into the center. This makes the biggest difference with rigging, is how close to the center you have your, or how close to where you want it to bend, you have your joints actually lined up. Right here, I might want to move this even just a little bit further into the center of the arm. So we'll do that right here. Same with the shoulder. The better you can line this stuff up before you start rigging, before you bind it, I should say, the better. Okay, so we've got now a whole left arm rigged up.